Hey guys, welcome back to the Smell the Leather Cricket podcast where we discuss all things cricket from an average Joe's perspective. I'm your host Adit, and joining me is my co host Gaurav. And today we are going to be discussing India's first test against Australia at the Adelaide Oval, their performance, the headlining performance, 36 all out, and also look forward to the second Boxing Day test match at the MCG. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Gaurav, before I come to you, let me just give our listeners a brief overview of the test match itself. So, India started with 244, with Kohli top scoring with 74 and Stark picking up 4 for 53. Australia backed it up with 191, Payne top scoring with a 73, and Ashwin picking up 4 for 55. At this stage of the game, India were having their noses in front, but then came that lesser spoken about score of 36 all out for India. And then Hazelwood picked up 5 for 8, and Australia finished the game off scoring 93 for 2, comfortably winning the game in the end. But then, what do you make of India's batting as a whole in this test match?
When we talk about the first innings, till the time Kohli and Pujara were batting, they looked pretty comfortable. Even Rahane for his 41, but that run out, it all went downhill from there for the India side. And post that, the batting looked pretty soft. The lower middle order didn't contribute much as well. So hence, I think they missed a great opportunity to have a 150 or a 120 run lead, which they could easily have done if had the lower middle order contributed even a little bit, but that unfortunately didn't happen for them. The openers didn't look solid. It was only Kohli, and for a brief period, Pujara looked settled. But once Nathan Lyon was back, he was troubling Pujara throughout and eventually got out to him.
Yes, right. As you mentioned, after that run out, it sort of went downhill for India. And in fact, they scored 92 runs for 14 wickets after that howler of a run out from Rahane's side. Now, we'll start at the top of the order, right with Prithvi Shaw. Ricky Ponting called it on air just a ball before Stark got that in swinger into him and got him out. What do you make of Prithvi Shaw's problems with his front foot and that in swinger that he was not able to tackle?
Yeah, I think he called it absolutely bang on, right? And yeah, if you really look at both the dismissals, his front foot was not planted even when the shot was completed. So, meaning he was late onto the shot both the times. Also, I think there's a problem with the back lift. Most of the times, the hands are going away from the body and then coming in, although it does come down straight, but once it starts away from the body, when the ball is coming in towards you or kind of zippers off the surface, it can get you in trouble. So that was the problem with Prithvi Shaw. But then now that the team is announced, we've seen Shubman Gill would be opening for India. I don't know whether I mean what the thinking around the team management is, because if you think a player is good enough to play the first ball in Australia down under, especially the pink ball test, and after two dismissals you keep him out, it really dents the confidence, I think. If he Because it's not that overnight he became a bad player. The only scenario where he can be kept out is he himself mentally thinks that he can't be scoring runs. I thought he should be given one more chance, probably. But then, yeah, look, if looks like when he is confused, and I think it would be a long break for Prithvi Shaw. He should get back to domestic cricket, probably work out on his technique, and I still think he's got a lot of talent to succeed even in Test cricket. So yeah, also I wanted to ask you, apart from Prithvi Shaw, the other batters as well. In the second innings specifically, none of the batters looked settled. None of them went on to score in double digits. So what do you make of the batting performance apart from Prithvi Shaw?
Yeah. So I think let's start with the person who partnered Prithvi Shaw, Mayank Agarwal. He looked settled in the first innings until he got that peach of an in swinger from Cummins. Pujara as well. They both looked solid right at the top of the order. And as you mentioned, once Nathan Lyon came in, he started troubling him. Pujara started coming down the track and offering no shots as an off spinner. That's probably what you want the batsman to be doing. Kohli came in and he continued his love affair with Australia until Rahane, came in with that howler of a run out. Rahane himself, he hasn't been the player that we thought he could have become. If you look at his stats from the start of 2018, it's not that impressive, uh, especially not for his caliber. And then Hanuman Vihari looked all right, I think. But then he was Hazelwood came in and got that LBW against him. Now moving on to the second innings, 36 all out. Obviously, it can't be pretty for any of those Indian batsmen. I think right after Bumrah got out their number three, it just spiraled down for them from there. But to be fair to India, I think it was, yes, there was definitely bad batting there, but it was a combination of also just a little bit of bad luck because I did see a stat which said that based on the expected wicket model, based on the deliveries Australia bowled in that second innings, India could have been 60 for three, but in turn they did get 36 all out. So it was not all India's bad batting. There was also a little bit of bad luck involved for the Indian batsmen. And if you see Australia's bowlers, they sort of in the first innings they were a little bit shorter, and then they corrected that in the second innings, bowling a little bit fuller, attacking more balls onto those stumps. And Hazelwood, right from his first delivery, in fact, in the second innings, just came in and got Mayank Agarwal, and then 5 for 8, which was sort of shadowed Cummins' great bowling in that second innings as well. So yeah, I also want to know what your thoughts specifically are with regards to that 36 all out.
Uh, yeah, I mean, you mentioned howler of a decision with Ajinkya Rahane. I also think it was a howler there sending Bumrah at number three. Just imagine what happened to Shami had this happened to Bumrah and he would have got injured. This series would pretty much have been over by now, which seems like the case even now. But then you lose a. I mean, if your number three can bat the entire day, he should be able to play out the 2 or 3 overs, which is the tough phase. I think that needs to be stopped. That night watchman, especially if he's your premier fast bowler, so that should be stopped. Also, regarding the other batsmen as well, I think there are some technical adjustment needs to be done. You talk about Vihari or Ajinkya Rahane's dismissal in the first inning when they took the second new ball and Mitchell Stark just stripped them through. There was no foot movement at all. They were stuck onto the crease. And Ajinkya Rahane, as you mentioned, he's definitely not been the player we expected him to be. I think it's high time he's played six tests in fact, and apart from that, the Lord's innings in 2014 and one more in Australia. I can't remember others where he was like really he took the Indian team forward and went on to win the test match, or has been the main player for India, like Kohli has been on most of the away tours, or Chiteshwar Pujara in the last Australian tour. So after playing for so many years, you expect your senior players to uh, take the team through. And to be honest, he doesn't look comfortable, especially at the start of the innings. Most of the time that he comes on to bat, even that happened both the innings in the first and the second. It doesn't. There's not a confident stride forward for him. With every time you see Ajinkya Rahane not taking the front foot like the way he should, he struggles. So yeah, even Hanuma Vihari, both the times. I mean, you have to be attacking, and by attacking, I don't necessarily mean going for boundaries, but then you need to have a solid defense as well, which shows a bowler that you're confident enough which did not happen. Kohli played a very rash shot in the second innings. You don't expect normally from him, especially at such a crucial juncture of the match. So yeah, and post that there was not much batting. Saha, Ashwin, they have not been in the great of forms, and of late in the last couple of years. And so yeah, I mean it was a dismal batting performance, and to be honest, it didn't look like a test match batting performance from them. They should have been more professional, should have hung on to it, and I think they. This result could have easily gone on their way had they scored 100, even 100, 120, or probably 150 runs in the second innings, but which did not happen.
Like you rightly mentioned, it was not the test batting performance that you would expect from India, but it's not all doom and gloom for India, because let's not forget this was a 7.5 test session. And after 6 sessions, India were ahead. So that was partly because of their incredible bowling, getting Australia all out for 191. So why don't we look at a little bit at their bowling performance as well?
Yeah, see, I think India's bowling since 2018 has been on another level, right up there with the best of the teams. Australia, I think, is the only other team which matches up to India's bowling attack. They were, in fact, better than the Australian pace attack in the first innings, uh, continuously bowling onto those areas. Ashwin was brilliant, as we spoke in the preview for the first match, that he always does well on the first test match on the away tours, and then unfortunately gets injured, which fingers crossed that doesn't happen for India this time around. Bumrah, Shami, Umesh, all of them were brilliant, and to be honest, they didn't have anything to bowl in the second innings. So I think Shami's loss is a big one, but then I do see potential in Mohammad Siraj as well. This could be a breakout series for him, because pitches would suit his kind of bowling. He's a tall bowler, would get bounce, would get sea movement of the surface. He does that really well, and he's the best in the red ball format. We have seen that in the domestic circuit as well. He performs at his uh, prime when he's bowling with the red ball, and with Jadeja coming back in, it strengthens the bowling attack even more. So it's the batting that needs to be really hitting the right strides for them to have a chance.
Yeah, for me, I think the most impressive performance was Ashwin's, because, like we mentioned in our test match preview as well, away spinners really don't do well at Adelaide Oval in the day-night test matches, with them averaging 49, and Ashwin himself averages 40 in Australia. So for him to pick up 4 for 55, especially that key wicket of Steven Smith, who loves batting against India, like we saw the joy on Ashwin's face and how much it meant to him, that particular wicket. Also, I think Shami was a little bit unlucky that he didn't get those wickets. He was bowling consistently in those areas, and making the top order of Australia uncomfortable. And he's surely going to be missed, because let's not forget, in his last two tours to Australia, the most recent one, he picked up 16 wickets, and the one before that 15. So now they are missing two incredibly good bowlers in Mohammad Shami and Ishan Sharma. But then, like you mentioned, we do have Siraj coming into the bowling lineup, as well as Ravindra Jadeja. And on that note, let's sort of move on to their changes now. So India made two forced changes, and then they made two other changes as well. So we have Pant coming in for Saha, Ravindra Jadeja coming in as well, and then Siraj and Shubman Gill. Now, let's not talk about the forced changes, because, as we mentioned, they're kind of forced. But then the other two changes in Shubman Gill for Prithvi Shaw and Rishabh Pant for Saha. What are your thoughts on it, given it's only after a test match and all these changes coming in? Is it good for Team India?
Yeah, look, I don't think they have a clarity at all. I mean, especially for Pant, I don't, and the poor guy doesn't know whether he belongs to the Indian team or no. One day he's a T20 batsman, or next day they call him a specialist ODI. He's batting at number 4 in the World Cup for India, and then especially with his tremendous away record, it made no sense to me why he wasn't included in the Test squad, uh, because that just doesn't give you any confidence at all. And it's anyway bizarre that you have separate wicket keepers in Indian conditions and away conditions. I mean, Saha is already 36. Eventually, he's going to retire. Then what would you choose? Some other wicket keeper who's good in Indian conditions? Don't think this is a durable plan. I mean, the guy averaged more than 50 the last time he toured in Australia. And especially with the vulnerable batting attack that India has, they should have included him in the first test, which we did mention in our earlier podcast as well. So this they had to do, and I'm glad they did it. On Prithvi Shaw, I'm not sure whether it's because the team management thinks he cannot score runs, or whether it's about him not being the right mental space, because overnight or over after a test match, a good player doesn't become bad all of a sudden. And but yeah, look, with the way he was playing, and I think it definitely would have dented his confidence. Hence, Shubman Gill, I would have ideally liked KL Rahul to come in place for him. They have going forward, they have to have uh, KL Rahul as a permanent member in the 11 in the Indian Test squad, because he, I think, is one of those few players in the Indian side who can play in the all three formats and be effective as well. We've seen only Virat Kohli and just Preet Bumrah are in that category who play all the three formats and are equally effective in that, and they've got to have KL Rahul as their one of their permanent members in the Test squad as well. Hopefully, we see him at some point of the series. A class player, can also bat in the middle order as well as in the opening slot as well. So yeah, look, I think they have a lot to think about. These changes just shows that their decision making was not right in the first test, but uh, I think at this point of time that's the best they could have done. uh, mm, yeah, what do you think? Any other changes? Probably KL, would you have preferred KL Rahul as well instead of someone like a Shubman Gill, or would you have liked him to bat at number 4 in place of Virat Kohli?
Before we get on to that, just to circle back to your point and on Rishabh Pant and his abilities with the bat in Australia. Now, Pant averages 146 against high pace bowling since his debut. That is since the start of 2018, which is the highest for any batsman. I don't know what was the thinking in the Indian camp for them to then suddenly shift to Saha when Pant was the incumbent in foreign test matches at least. That was a little bit of a thinker, especially since Pant also got 100 in the warm up game against the Australia A side. So it was a little bit strange for Saha to come in. Um, and then Shubman Gill and KL Rahul, I think KL Rahul has had his time with the Indian Test team. I know he's in great nick at the moment, but also to keep an eye on the future, I think Shubman Gill, especially with the way he played in that ODI, he seemed like he can tackle the Australian bowling attack, and I would like to see them give him a chance as well. So maybe yes, KL Rahul can obviously be in the plans in the future, but I think this was the right call for them to bring in Shubman Gill for this particular test match, just to see what the youngster has to offer. And since there's so much hype around him and his stock has sort of gone up when you look at Prithvi Shaw's bad performances, people are just talking more about Shubman Gill coming into the side. So might as well give him a go over there. Also, India's fielding, I think Ravindra Jadeja coming in, hopefully that makes a difference because they dropped 5 catches in that first innings against the Aussies. And if you look at their stats since the start of 2018, they've got only 78% of the catches that have come their way in Test match cricket, and only three other teams are poorer than that in the form of West Indies, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. I'm sure India don't want to be in that company when it comes to their catching record, and hopefully that improves in the coming game as well. Now, the iconic Boxing Day Test match. What do you see India's chances being for this particular game?
To be honest, I don't see many chances for them. Kohli going out, Shami not being available. There's there's just too much repairing that needs to be done. I definitely don't see them getting all out for 36 again. But then, yeah, looks like Australia would be too strong for them, uh, because I mean, you after the first Test match, you change your opening batting. Your main batsman is not available. Your one of your premier fast bowler is not there. Plus, it's just I mean, even like you said, the fielding, they just don't look professional enough. I mean, young guys who are Prithvi Shaw dropping a dolly of a catch. I mean, these things. I mean, if you keep doing it, dropping guys like Labuschagne and Smith, so this just even when you have an advantage, you can't hold on to that with all these dropped catches, and even the batting, like we mentioned, just does not look professional enough. And but yeah, look, there are a couple of players. I still think guys like Pujara and Mayank Agarwal, they have to step up. Rahane's these three tests are kind of uh, make or break in his career, I feel. Also, Rishabh Pant coming in, I'm most excited about him. I've always liked him as a player, even with all his downfalls. But I would like the Indian team to give him a greater go there. But yeah, Australia definitely looks to be much stronger side, and I see them probably winning the test. You see any other chances regarding India, especially with the changes, and because their bowling looked promising enough, and a couple of their batsmen doing pretty well as well. So, do you see a closer match, or do you see them in Australia rolling over India again?
I think Melbourne is the place where India has their best chance on the store to win a game. Their record at Melbourne is great, and even the pitch conditions at Melbourne, it's a drop in pitch at the MCG, and it usually is just a little bit dead slow and not that traditional Australian wicket that you would expect. So it would really suit the Indian batsmen as well as the bowlers. They're probably more used to those conditions than Australia themselves. So in that respect, I think India definitely has more chances. And I think you mentioned on the earlier preview as well that it was brave for the Indian management to take the first test match as a day-night test match, and probably that backfired a little bit. It exposed a lot of flaws in the Indian batting lineup, but I still feel yes, they are going to miss Kohli and the bowlers as well, but they just might challenge Australia, especially at the MCG, because that's the ground that most favors India. Now Australia, I think they in their batting department up top in the first innings it was evident that that was their weak link, and Payne sort of saved the day for them. If he did not get that 73 runs, those crucial 73 runs, I think even if India would have got bowled out for 36, they might have been able to get over the line. So, just talking about Australia a little bit, how do you see them as a side, especially after that first game?
Look, we did mention in the preview as well, the batting, I still feel it looks vulnerable on the either side of Labuschagne and Smith. Pin was the savior for them for sure, but the other batsmen, the openers, and guys like Travis Head and other batters still don't look confident enough. Again, there's a chance for the Indian bowling lineup to cash in there if they can get Labuschagne and Smith out early. That that would put a lot of pressure on Australia. I honestly don't feel there's much batting apart from that, but their bowling was. I mean, it was top class. It was sight to behold. I think watching Cummins, Hazelwood, and Stark bowl in tandem, it definitely it reminded us of the 80s and the pace bowling of then, and I see them repeating a similar kind of performance again. Uh, so we know Justin Langer mentioned they would go in with the similar 11 this time around. What are you making of Australia's side, their batting specifically? Do you see them coming up with a better batting performance, and how much of uh, Tim Paine's role would be again as a wicket keeper and a batsman, because his role has been questioned a lot of late, whether he deserves a place in the side or not.
Yeah. So first of all, on their batting, I think if Joe Burns didn't get that second inning score that he did, 51 not out, there would have been questions raised, and probably they would have tried out Marcus Harris. But I think that innings would have given him a little bit of confidence and just enough to keep his place for the second test. Matthew Wade, it was his first time around batting, opening the batting in a first class game, let alone an international test match. So maybe you would want to give him another go there. He looked decent in the second innings before getting run out. Um, and then yeah, as you said, like either side of Steven Smith and Manus Labuschagne, it's a little bit shaky, Australia's batting, and we did see that in the first innings as well. Now, coming on to Tim Paine's role, you mentioned that his keeping role as well as his batting role, but let's not forget he's done an amazing job as Australia's captain after that embarrassing incident in South Africa. He's done really well, and if you look at his batting stats, yes, you do mention, okay, Rod Marsh or someone like Brad Haddin was never questioned, but then he has an higher average than both of them. And just the way he played his first innings, 73 at that crucial point in time where if he did not get that innings, then Australia were looking down the barrel. And you want players like that, especially if he's your captain, he's leading from the front. I don't think there should be any questions with regards to his place in the side. He definitely deserves that spot. And I think he will continue captaining Australia as well for of the foreseeable future. So yeah, that's been our preview of the second test, as well as going back to the first test and seeing how the India did in that test match as well. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're listening to the podcast on a podcast platform, connect with us on Instagram to let us know your thoughts. And thank you so much for your time, Gaurav. It was great discussing this particular test match, as well as looking forward to the iconic Boxing Day test match starting tomorrow.
Thanks a lot. We look forward to interacting with you again. We are coming up with some more content. There's gonna be the ODI team of the decade that's going to be out soon. I hope you all have watched our test team of the decade. Let us know what did you think of that, and staying tuned for more.
For sure. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. If anyone's still sticking around, and thanks, Gaurav. Goodbye.
Thanks.